Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. And for many of you who have spent time over the past 6 months meeting regularly and doing work asynchronously, it's just been really fantastic to see these working groups take form. And I'm excited to hear about what folks have to share out. So, my name is Gina Fiorelli Duranlo. I am the program coordinator for CLEAN, the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network. We are a program focused on promoting climate literacy and energy education and creating more collaborations and opportunities for networking among other folks in this field. So the ACCEL Summit, just for additional context for folks, was a vision that we had a couple of years ago at this point to bring people together and break down some silos and have folks who are interested in working on similar topics be introduced to each other and be able to make gains working together and get them all in the same room. So that's really what the vision is with ACCELS. Initially in our first year, we had more of a traditional summit format with speakers and that type of thing. But what we learned after our first year of doing this is that people really ultimately just needed time to get together and to convene and to chat with each other. So that's kind of been our focus in the second year. We changed our format a little bit. And we had 5 working groups meeting regularly over the past 6 months. So we'll get into that, but just some housekeeping is that I wanted to let everyone know if you have any tech questions, please email clean@colorado.edu, or if you have any other questions, I have a couple of colleagues who are going to be monitoring that email. So hopefully we don't have any major issues, but just so you know. And then who is in the room with us right now? So per our registration results, we have a lot of professional development providers. That is the highest number, non-formal educators and classroom teachers both, but actually a little bit more of the non-formal educators. We also have a lot of folks who are curriculum developers. So everyone here, in a sense, is really focused on education in some way, shape, or form, which is fantastic, whether that be in a nonprofit, government, a school setting, whatever. The CLEAN network in general is very diverse in terms of what educational venues we work in. So it's really good to see that represented here. And just a note that we are spread across the US. CLEAN in general is a nationally focused program, so we love to see regional work happening. But in terms of who we serve, it's really widespread across the US. We have a mix of early career, mid-career, and late career folks with some retired folks. We have some really fantastic retired teachers who are really supportive of our work, and it's great to have them. And similar to what our roles are, things that we are working on are educational resources and experiences. So that kind of ties into the professional development and community engagement as well. We're all very focused on collaboration, which is fantastic. We are also working with educators, youth and students, communities and families, and policymakers. So while we are educators, that doesn't necessarily always mean that our main audience is youth, but is a large part of it, students of any age, really. So I'm gonna click through these actually and focus on our agenda for now. So we are going to start in a few minutes with our working group presentations. And then I'm hoping Frank Neopold will be able to join us at 3:45 for a little bit of a visioning. He's having some travel issues today, so that might not happen, but we'll see and we'll go with it. And then at 4 o'clock, we will start the breakout rooms. And for everyone here, just some clarification about what we'll be talking about in these breakout rooms. What I'm going to do is open up a breakout room for each group. So there'll be 5 breakout rooms for each group, and attendees will have the opportunity to go into those breakout rooms and chat with the working group leaders. Or if you've been participating in a certain group, I really think that it would be helpful to use this time to either talk about some last minute items or discuss if there is potential for continuing this group. There is absolutely no obligation that these working groups continue. However, I do know that some of our leaders have expressed interest in continuing the work and feeling like there's still more to be done. So some of our groups will be sunsetting, but some are going to potentially continue on. And I think that these breakout groups will be a good opportunity for people to just ask questions and determine what else needs to be done. And that will vary from group to group. So we can chat more about details on that. But one other thing that I want to note about these breakout groups is that I'm going to open up a few extras that are not assigned topics for people who are interested in potentially proposing a new topic for this upcoming year to get together and chat. So when the time comes, I'll have anyone who wants to jump into a breakout room and talk about maybe a new topic. I'll have them enter that into the chat, and then I'll open that number of rooms based on who is expressing interest in the chat. So that's kind of the vision for the next little bit of time here. And then we'll just kind of have those breakout rooms close organically. We will definitely stop them at 5 if things wrap up earlier. If the groups, I know a couple of groups are sunsetting, so once those conversations wrap up, it's okay to close those a little bit early, but we will have a hard stop at 5. And we will not reconvene. So once we go into breakout groups, feel free to just do that and then leave whenever you need to leave. So we are in the next phase here for our share outs. So all of our working group leaders should be able to share their screens. I'll stop sharing mine, but I did just want to say we have 5 fantastic groups who are going to spend about 10 minutes or so presenting on what progress they've been able to make, share successes and challenges, their vision for whatever resource they've created, their vision for that for the future, and maybe acknowledge some of the participants in their working groups as well, because this was, I know, a team effort for a lot of people. So first, we'll have the Climate Career Pathways group with Mark Benage will be going first. The Climate Action and Equity group is with Jim Callahan. I'll have them go second. And Jim is going to be joined by quite a few folks, some of them being students, which is really, really exciting. So there'll be a lot of voices there. It might take a little bit longer, which is okay. And then National Center for Science Education will go next on their Climate Knowledge Through Concept Inventories group. Climate Generation with their rural communities presentation, and then rounding it out with the Climate Change and Mental Health group with my colleague Alicia from Clean and series, and in addition to the Climate Mental Health Network as well. So that's the lineup. Does anyone have any questions before I open up the floor to our working groups? So let's see, Mark, are you ready to jump in?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Just make sure I can find my right screen. Always the tricky part. Okay.
A little
Uh,
panic.
where? Okay, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. It's just
No worries.
okay. Quit. Oh, okay. That should make it a little easier. And keynote. Nope.
No worries. And I just want to say, while you're doing that, Mark, for
Yeah.
the
Oh, there
group,
it is.
oh, there we go.
Okay, so as you heard, we were the Climate Career Pathway group. I'm so excited that we had this chance. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we were, but it was just such a great experience to be able to meet monthly or even twice a month in some cases over the last few months. We were looking at how not just workforce development in climate related fields, but also how it comes into K-12 education. So from K-12 all the way through career, how do we build these career pathways to climate careers? What we were looking at, we are more than 20 people. We represented time zones. It was tricky in setting up our monthly meetings because we were representing time zones from Alaska to the East Coast. And then similarly, just like we were geographically diverse, we were also representing lots and lots of different points of view. From a game designer and lots of nonprofit folks and higher ed, state agencies like from New Jersey and Florida and so on, and informal ed, and then some independent and freelance educators as well, which was super. I loved the diversity of perspective. It really brought a lot out as we were meeting. So what did we want to do this year, and what did we do? The first thing was we wanted to know like what's already out there. Who's doing what in the climate career program space? Who's building interesting programs on whatever level? Is it a career exposure kinds of a unit in upper elementary or middle school? Is it a CTE pathway in high school? Is it a dual enrollment pathway that connects students to community college and industry? What sort of things are out there? So we created this Google form, and we workshopped this for quite a while, actually. Like, what did we want to know? We really workshopped what we wanted to know, and then also we wanted to figure out how did the survey. We didn't want to make the survey, take 3 hours to fill out because then nobody would probably finish it. So what was really essential, and what was the highest, who could use this information for what ends? How could we make it useful for the most number of people? So we did this big survey here and we tested internally and we started expanding it now. And we would love, one of the things we'll do at the end is share you all the links in the chat so that you can add the programs you know about. Okay, so the first survey we did was about who's doing interesting work in this space anywhere, and what do those programs look like? And then the next one we said is, what about funding opportunity? Like if I'm a school or if I'm a teacher or if I'm, who's funding this kind of work? And we enjoyed putting this together, and we have fewer responses here. So we are excited. We hope that we can continue to get more responses for both of these now. Yeah, now that we're ready to, show it to all of you. So yeah, as I said, the survey design was like what we had to think about what information is useful for what audiences. How can a program designer, if I'm a teacher or an education leader, if I'm maybe a state agency wanting to promote this work in my state, where can I not just like tell me the name of a bright spot, but what are the salient features that make it a bright spot? What are the possible things? on the funding thing, one of the things I really liked is somebody suggested on the funding survey is that we add a link so that if you are connected to the funding opportunity yourself, let's say it's a state effort, from the State Department of Education, and you work for the State Department of Education, you can identify, that if you'd want to be contacted, or if you are not connected with it, but you've applied for funding through that stream, how did you find it? There's a series of questions that's sort of what's the communication like with this funder, things like that. So love, love, love what we came up with. And then we are also going to start publishing the results. We don't have, I have to say, this is early on in the work and we don't have that many results at this point, but we're excited. Like every time a new result comes in, somebody posts a new funding opportunity or a new specific example, it's so exciting to see what people are doing in these areas. And we know, for instance, that there are some recent funding on both coasts, for instance. There's recent funding, like New Jersey just gave out a lot of money to stimulate climate education, broadly speaking, not inherently career related, but we know that some people may take it that way. And then in that case, if somebody receives funding from one of these newer sources, it will end up in the other table. And so more people will be able to benefit from it. Some really, really exciting things happening, like I said, on both coasts right now. And one of the best things about my group, our group, was just how many interesting cross-pollinations there were already. And I just want to shout out Patrick and Samara, Jessica, who are in the audience, at least, and maybe a few more now by the time I'm done talking. Because everybody's contribution was incredibly helpful. What's next for us? We want to continue to collect these responses and also share results, right? We want this to be a resource that is valuable to the entire ACCELS community and beyond. We know that there are a lot of people that are trying to, there's a lot of federal money coming in. Obviously, there's a lot of state stuff that people are starting to connect dots. And so that's where you all come in. I think, we'd love for your help in filling out the things you know about that we haven't listed, right? Or even if you're in doubt, if you're not sure if it's listed yet, just definitely put it in there. And then I think that there's a sense that a number of us want to continue to meet because even though there's a lot of exciting things happening in this space, there's still a lot of structural obstacles where I'll just speak from California's point of view, for instance. There are different parts of the state. The CTE folks are not necessarily talking to the climate folks. And so there's just a lot of ways nationally, within states, within regions where there's missing pieces. And I think our work in the future can help with that. So that is it. I'm going to copy and paste these into the chat. And then I will go off of share so that if there were any quick questions, we could do that. But I'll throw these things in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
I think it's really important to highlight, and for me even to hear that the group is still actively looking for information to be input into the survey, and something that in our network we can help promote.
Right.
Folks in this room can contribute and then also push it out to our networks. So thank you for sharing that. This is awesome. Great. So if you have any questions for Mark or have interest in joining that group, they will be breakout group 1. And our next group is the Climate Action and Equity group with Jim Callahan and climatechangeeducation.org. There we go. Seeing some photos, so
Hi,
looks
Gina.
like screen share is working.
As always, you make such a great show for us all. This is fantastic.
Good.
So let's see. So I'm going to get started, and I will have various things. So at the November summit, we put a lot of emphasis on introducing you to examples of the different parts of the different members of our working group. I'll briefly show you some of those slides or things from time to time on that. These are sort of coming up a little bit random. This time, those are still continuing. And by the way, you'll get a sense of from what we are continuing to develop about why is it possible, but why is it also necessary that there are dozens of organizations in our working group. It's just, we could not do that, what we do, if we just had a few. Also, by the way, I want to note just from the beginning is that we are definitely continuing. So ACCELS is a fantastic program and things, but we are definitely going on the spirit of it. So whatever's continuing, we have no end in sight. We will be here, and a lot of that you might have to do with the age of the people in our group. So what we definitely want to give you an update of areas of particular advancement that's happened since November. But I think with the risk of stretching a little bit what I think ACCELS can do, we want to put a little bit more emphasis on at this time on the that it's not just working within our working group, but we want to reach out to the other working groups. Okay, what you do, we understand the importance of every one of these working groups. And we want to know them and we want to connect because we need you to what we do. And we hope that when you're looking at what we do, you might see if there are things in what we do that will benefit what you do. Okay. So for example, among our students, we have students who are studying to be mental health experts, professionals, with climate change being a focus. So they do a career, peer counseling. They do direct, what's the term? You guys are going to help me on it. A direct service. We need to know what organizations we're going to work with. Anybody who doesn't know the importance of working with climate generation isn't a serious climate educator, right? You got to work with climate. So, if we're not reaching out to what climate generation is doing, we're not paying attention to that. And likewise, of course, the clean and the clean network, we use the resources. Energy education, absolutely. This is a huge part of what we do, right? In the career pathways, you'll see that that's very much one of the things in our classes. We are starting people on their careers. This isn't just like, I'll think about it. They are starting in climate action careers of all different types. Okay, so let's see. Want to give you that a little idea on my colleagues. You're going to meet most of them. Who are we here today? So we're going to have Professor Victoria Bampo, who is Professor of Chemistry, but you'll get a sense of, it's Victoria that has made possible the class, and I'll put a plural on that. You'll understand why in a minute, on classes that focus on climate change. There are two of Victoria and my colleagues who are climate educators, but also BARD students, Jade and Atreyu. We have with us Anthony Mills, who is an educator and a lab manager, both for Mobile Climate Science Labs, and as you can see, very much part of what BARD is able to do on a district level. And finally, there is Luca and Clara. Luca you'll be hearing from, and Clara hopefully you'll be hearing from in another way on different things, but they are both pioneers in climate action as well as educators themselves. So I'm going, this is my introduction. I'm going to give you a lead off, Victoria, Professor Bampo. We're going to be going over to you.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. I found that I must not be surprised that it often falls on me to be a representative for the thousands of teachers, schools, and classrooms providing the actual in-person climate education nationwide, those that are not here today. At the November ACCEL Summit, I described the climate science and action course at our school, which meets 5 days a week all semester long. This elective course remains the most advanced, in-depth, career-building, hands-on, and engaging of any climate class among all the K-12 schools in the United States. In 2022-24 and 25 academic year, we are expanding to provide a second climate course complementing the content of the first. This will allow us to deliver on our holistic objectives, that is inclusive of social science, high quality language and arts and communication, the humanities and arts, practical climate action and energy career path experience, being leaders in social justice, equity among the schools, international studies, and much more. That's an enormous responsibility. What we do at BARD DC is setting the gold standard of excellence for schools nationwide. We already partner with dozens of programs and professionals, yet now undergoing great expansion for the next school year. We are scheduling in invited guests, curriculum content, advisors, internships, student projects, field work away from school, climate education events in DC's public schools, faculty and student presentations at conferences, media coverage, and successful climate action milestones. It is essential that we choose well. With so many, which do we include? Who should we work with most closely? In almost every aspect of climate education, there are many programs and resources we could choose to utilize. Today, we are reviewing all of our fellow ACCEL working groups from that perspective. We take your presentations today very seriously. I'd like now to introduce two of my students and colleagues, Jade and Etreyu. As they speak, I want to encourage everyone here to please be active in the chat. Doing so will not be rude. We want to know what you feel when you hear and see what they do. If you like something, please express that. Anything that troubles you, please indicate that as well. Jade, Etreyu, I turn the floor over to you now.
In the next 2 minutes, I'm asking you to see climate education from the point of view of a young student from Southeast Washington, D.C. Picture yourselves in these moments. What makes you so engaged? How do you feel when you are discovering and exploring climate science with your friends? As a young student, how will you relate to your educators? Do you feel connected and comfortable? Can you understand one another well? Is this a learning environment that you love? This is what my colleagues and I do. We are climate educators, and our age doesn't make us any less credible. Students can teach students too.
We love to teach students. In these photos, we are at an outdoor event for District of Columbia Public Schools. Classes from 6 different schools were in attendance all day doing hands-on climate science and action labs. These same scenes take place inside of schools. In our chat and breakout sessions, I have some questions for you. Who encourages scenes like this to happen? Who goes to great lengths to prevent it from happening? Which educational programs do you know have done this best? Do you like what we are doing? Do you want to work with us? What concerns do you have?
So I'm hoping we're getting a little bit more in the chat on that, because I thought that was pretty impressive. What I want to do is I'm going to speak a little bit about, sorry, I have to press the right buttons here. Which one's mine not pressing right? Is what we have going with energy efficiency action. So what we're able to do, we have made a great deal of progress in the changes and to be accepting of how the last time we spoke of how the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian's have followed every recommendation we had and essentially changed hundreds of all their light fixtures in these major exhibits that had been incandescent, especially ones that also were on climate change and energy, very ironically, that they were lit by incandescent and now they're LED. We are now moving to the White House. We are continuing the Capitol. The Library of Congress we're documenting and coming along. We're 94% of the way there of having that all switch from incandescents, which were the first incandescents in the United States, by the way, to LED. Okay. I'm going to want to turn this over here to my colleague Luca in a minute, because there's a little bit of what do these work? How do these do things? So if you're ready, Luca, anytime, you go ahead, and I'm going to try and keep up with you.
All right, so this is just going to be very brief. I just want to talk a little bit about like the science and technology behind what we do at Mobile Climate Science Labs. So our students can survey like any building in the world with special cameras that we have. And all inefficient lighting wastes large amounts of electrical energy by producing light that's invisible that we can't see. And efficient LEDs don't do this. We share our images in such a way as to convince building management to convert to inefficient lighting. Doing so reduces a building's carbon footprint. Here is a before picture. So this is lights in a Smithsonian Museum exhibit when they were still incandescent. And let's see if we can have another image. And I wonder if we can get another one, but this is what they look like afterwards now that they're LEDs. And you can see that there's a lot less light going on in the picture. And the inside of the White House, especially, is still 60 to 80% energy wasting incandescent light, which is not only detrimental to the climate, but also a big waste of taxpayer dollars as well. This is the Presidential Movie Theater, or it was. I don't know if we have it on screen anymore. Imaged in infrared and visible light. The infrared is sort of the purple that you see, and the movie theater is lit with all incandescent lighting, which requires a lot of air conditioning. With our cameras, we do a fingerprint analysis to identify which kind of technology is used in each location. So one of the things that we've photographed is a particular incandescent that I don't know if we can have on screen. Sorry, Jim, in front of the portrait of President Obama. And Obama here is being lit with climate change accelerating incandescent lights, which you can see the spectrum of light of the different photons that are being produced by the light is shown in this image. And you can see that it continues past red into the infrared spectrum in the purple that you can see at the end of the tails. And that's called infrared light. By contrast, and happily, our team has been scientifically documenting the amazing progress we are making at the Library of Congress, where 94% of the incandescent lights have now been replaced indoors. This is one of the very last incandescent light bulbs remaining, and all the rest in this row are now LEDs. We students are the ones who have tracked this for the Library of Congress. It's just really important to mention. And this is sort of like the center of what we do, having students be able to do this and be able to accurately pinpoint different areas of incandescent light. And that's sort of very important to us, and it makes us be able to make a real difference in the community.
Yes. So thank you, Luca, so much. Fantastic. What I want to go here is one of the things that we are very pleased to see is that there is attention in the climate action, in the climate community in general of, and let's see, the right button, here we are, toward not only paying attention to or trying to work on individual teachers in individual schools, or say at a museum, or at the state level, or the national level. There's a lot of attention at, well, how do we can influence an entire district? How can we influence many schools? Well, we're glad that people are doing that. One of the things we can report of, we're basically up to pre-COVID levels and maybe beyond in terms of our ability to do what we've been doing for over a decade, which is reaching hundreds of thousands or the 100,000 community level all the time. So we reach whole districts, we serve whole districts. If I were to list the number of districts in California, it's something like 40 districts that we are the teachers who reach on the district level. We do it for the districts. And now we're in Washington, D.C. and Montgomery County, Maryland in doing that. We have that capacity. We do that. And part of it is because we have specialists. We have people who know how to teach climate change well and effective and draw people in. So I think it's a little bit of just know that we are going to continue to be around. And if that is anything to work with, that's an action on that here. So I think I'm gonna wrap this up here pretty soon. I just want to close a little. I'll go back to these slides a little bit and just give an idea that we, again, many of the organizations that are here are not even listing of them. I mean, for instance, there's Tiffany Boyd's projects in Colorado where we have listed. It goes on quite a bit, but absolutely the Clean Network is so much a part of what we're doing. While it's not kind of fair to name drop them in terms of being part of our working group, we couldn't do what we're doing without Clean, and naming the others. So I think I'm probably leaving something out, but that's pretty much what I have. And I'm so proud to be here with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And there is quite a bit of chatter in the chat with questions and just support and shared feelings, which is really great to see. And once again, I think it's so fantastic to have students here speaking, just because it helps us stay motivated and stay hopeful, and get new perspectives. So thank you all for being here. Great. Well, we will have Jim and his colleagues be in breakout room 2 to continue this discussion. And next up on the list, we have the National Center for Science Education Group, which is the Flexible Concept Inventories working group. And everyone there should be able to join or share their screen too. Whoever has slides.
Okay, sorry, we're getting our slides up.
Trying to make sure we're clicking the right screen this time.
No worries at all.
Yeah,
I never realized how many tabs I have open until I try to share my screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That looks good. I see the Canvas slide.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I am Wendy Johnson, a science education specialist with the National Center for Science Education. And this working group, Kristen and Carrie will introduce themselves in a moment, but we have been interested in having a concept inventory or some other sort of validated assessment for measuring students' understanding of climate change, specifically at the high school level. There is a lot of need for being able to understand what students know about climate change and how their understanding is changing. So we knew that this is actually a very large goal. Our smaller piece just for this working group was to conduct a literature review, see what's out there, and start sort of building a bank of potential questions that fit into these 4 key areas we had identified: matter, energy, earth systems, and human activities.
Hi, my name is Carrie Herndon. I'm a curriculum developer and an education specialist. I'm currently unaffiliated. So what is a concept inventory? Concept inventories are valuable instruments for curriculum developers, teachers, researchers, and this is because they provide a relatively simple way to assess students' understanding of a particular concept. They can be used for obtaining data for research purposes, but they're also important in the classroom in order to assess what students understand prior to instruction and whether or not their understanding changed with the instruction. And this is important when assessing what misconceptions students hold regarding different topics, and in this case, climate change. On the slide, you can see a selection of different concept inventories listed for other topics. Next slide, please. So while there are a variety of concept inventories currently available for these other topics, there isn't one that's available for climate change that's geared towards high school students. So when we're thinking about climate change, in order to understand climate change, we feel that it's essential to understand these 4 domains: energy, matter, earth systems, and human activity. There are foundational misconceptions in each of these domains, and having a misconception in one of these domains can lead to a misunderstanding of climate change in general. And for this reason, we determined that a concept inventory that was meant to assess an understanding of climate change in general would need to also include specific questions that addressed each of these domains.
So we started by kind of gathering and doing like a research review, looking for some concept inventories that did exist in those domains that Carrie just identified. Oh, sorry. Also, I'm Kristen Mayer. I am a high school science teacher. I teach at Kentwood Public Schools, 9th grade science class. And
incorporate a lot of like climate change work into my curriculum in that science class. So the work we were doing, we started by looking at and identifying some instruments that are available. Most of them are geared more for the undergraduate level, and so it was a little bit high level for high school. And we found that a lot of them had questions that were too difficult and kind of dug into specific details that were not aligned with the next generation science standards. And there were a lot more tools geared towards whether or not you kind of believe or accept that climate change is a thing, as opposed to tools around the causes and the complicated interactions around climate change. So here's some examples of some questions we found, right? So like digging into the greenhouse gas effect, which is a really important interaction in climate change, but it's not actually a standard in next generation science standards. And so a student may have a pretty solid understanding of climate change and the interactions causing it, but struggle to answer this question because they just don't know the term greenhouse gases or greenhouse gas effect. Similarly, another question about photons being emitted and by greenhouse gas molecules. So just kind of these are examples of questions that are just getting into details that go beyond the next generation science standards, and so would impact their usefulness across a range of high school classes.
Yeah, and even other assessment aspects in terms of emit and reflect. It gets into, if a student answers this question incorrectly, does it really mean that they don't understand the key idea or that they don't know that word? And of course, that's true of any, assessment, but especially when we start thinking about climate change and all these complicated interactions that we want to know if they know about. And then really, Kristen and I used to teach together, and we found that like, for some reason, reflect and absorb and emit are like,
they can't keep it straight.
It's just impossible for kids to like use the right word when even when they appear to know what they're talking about, and other times they sound like they know what they're talking about.
Yes.
And they don't.
Yes.
So it's very complicated. So our group collected and organized these articles and instruments, and we analyzed the relevant sections of the framework for K-12 science education and the standards themselves. But we all kind of understand that the way the next generation science standards were put together misses a lot of kind of big ideas, because there was this mix and match between the practices and the cross-cutting concepts and the disciplinary core ideas. So we kind of defer to the framework, and we spent quite a bit of time looking at the different, like what is in physics? Do they really, does the framework suggest that students need to know the difference between infrared, for example, and, other types of electromagnetic radiation? Or is it okay if they're just more kind of like light is absorbed and then it's, emitted and or like transferred? Like, what is the level of detail and understanding required for energy in these other parts? Same for matter. Students have a lot of misconceptions around atoms and molecules, and that really messes them up in terms of climate change if they don't understand that the carbon atoms that were part of a fossil fuel are now in the air. Then they just get weird ideas about you just burn the fossil fuels and they're gone, so what's the problem? So we did identify the one instrument that really had the most work and had been validated for high school students was actually developed and validated in, was it Australia?
Australia.
Yeah. So we interviewed that researcher. She came to one of our working group meetings and sort of presented her work, and we asked a lot of questions. And then we dug into the questions from her instrument and other instruments to kind of assess the alignment to the next generation science standards and kind of the the assessment decisions that they were making about, what you'd be able to say about students' understanding. And I would say our biggest finding is that really that concept inventory framework isn't going to work for what we're thinking. We already sort of knew that going in. That's why we were saying, oh, it's 4 domains and it's sort of like 4 different flexible concept inventories. But I think our literature review and the work that we did was like, no, it can't even really be, it wouldn't really even look like a concept inventory anymore. It would look more like the 3-dimensional assessments that are coming out, where, for example, with those greenhouse effect questions, we really started envisioning more of like, here's a model and having the students explain it so that they didn't have to necessarily know the words, when was the energy infrared and when was it visible light, but that they should be able to explain, what's happening to energy as it moves through the system. So we decided that this kind of like each concept having X number of multiple choice questions wasn't really going to work. The other thing leading us to that was lots of discussion about why different assessment writers were choosing the particular questions. And you can kind of clearly see that it's reflecting common misconceptions and like kind of what's happening in the media right now.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why a lot of them focus on acceptance and sort of gauging students, like how, what are they believing about whether climate change is happening and what are the causes? And that's going to continue to shift. We know sort of the newer version of climate denial is, sure, it's happening, but that it's not that big of a deal. Or sure, it's happening,
but we can't do anything
there's
about it.
nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
We're all just going to die. That's what the freshmen are always saying.
As we were looking at some of these too, I was having a conversation with the students in my class about an article I had just read of a new talking point is, well, it's not fossil fuels aren't the problem, it's the emission that's the problem. It's the greenhouse gases from burning the fossil fuels. So our fossil fuels are low carbon fossil fuels, so they're okay. Like, it's just like the talking points are going to keep shifting. And so it felt like some of these questions were playing whack-a-mole with kind of the newest talking point. Whereas if we could get more of a holistic model and kids could say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense with the more holistic model, and they could confront those talking points on their own without having to like teach to each one.
Yeah. We need students to be able to say, wait a minute, if you burn anything, carbon dioxide goes into the air, you're not fooling me. And then also dig into the nuance of course, natural gas is slightly different than, gasoline or coal, but without being, overly swayed by those nuances. And then also at the end of all of this is the fact that, districts and teachers, if we want a practical tool, 48 of the 50 states now say that their state standards are based on the framework for K-12 education. That isn't actually completely accurate, but they at least are all pointing to it and saying this is the goal. And so if what teachers are teaching and what they're assessing isn't related to that goal, then it's never going to really, mesh well in classrooms and serve the teacher's purposes well, and always just kind of be this extra research thing that only certain people are interested in. So thanks for hearing our update, and we will look forward to talking more in the breakout rooms.
Thanks, Wendy and Kristen and Carrie. That's super fantastic to hear about. It's not something that I personally know much about, so learning from you has been fantastic. We have 2 more groups, so I'll keep us moving on to Climate Generations group on climate change efforts in rural communities. And great, screen looks awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Just getting all my screens set up, but I think we're good to go. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, this is the characterizing the unique opportunities and challenges of supporting climate change education in rural communities. So what did we do? We met, of course, 4 times between December and March, and really focused on 2 main goals, which was what are we as a community of climate change educators not providing currently to rural communities? And overall, what might be helpful for us to create, put together, again, for the ACCEL community. So who supported this work? We had a great group of folks providing input and recommendations over the last 5 months. And this is the main collaboration team. Again, just like the rest of the working groups, folks from across North America, lots of time zones, which was always kind of interesting, but really amazing to hear all of the challenges, but really opportunities that exist within rural communities around climate change solutions and climate change education. So we started off with brainstorming some perceptions that we as a working team might have about rural communities, as well as what we saw as rural values. And then we really tried to put these kind of behind us, these preconceptions or biases we had, and try to dive into some landscape mapping. And of course, using the knowledge of our collaboration team and colleagues who actually live in rural communities. So we tried to do some of this mapping and tie this back to what do rural communities value and how do we as a community meet those needs? You can see some of the resources that we jumped into. I'll just show a couple images here, but one great resource is American Communities, really diving into kind of who represents this community, what do they value, what do they need to continue to be successful. We, of course, looked at the Rural Democracy Initiative that just goes into really in-depth data analysis. And then something I always jump back to is the climate change opinion map. So where is some of the disconnect and where does climate change inaccuracies, as we just heard about, or misinformation come up, and how do we as a community meet those challenges? So we did some great sharing as we had folks from, again, participating across the country and really representing numerous different community makeups. And so that was probably I think the greatest benefit of meeting over the last 5 months was really hearing what are some of the unique perspectives from across the United States and what are some of those commonalities that make up rural communities. And then we tried to narrow down some of these themes into shared values and needs. And this was, of course, the challenging bit, coming into what the heck are we going to produce? We had great opportunities of chatting, but we were really trying to think, what is this end result going to be? What we did is we did a little research on what already exists. So sort of that landscape analysis, and realized we needed to ground ourselves in some best practices of how do we show up to communities that we are not already a part of. Again, we did some brainstorming, knowledge sharing of how do you engage with these communities that you're not a part of, and really came out to what is this deliverable going to be. So we talked about something that was going to be a living document and easily editable, because that's always the challenge. We want to make sure that it's not going to cease to be helpful in 6 months or a year. So some big parts that we really need to think about is how is this developed, or who was a part of it? I think it's important to put that out there. Who is the audience? Why connection to rural communities is so important. Recommendations for making connections and resources for further readings. And so how far did we actually get in the last 5 months, as we're all incredibly busy? We have started a working draft, which includes the above mentioned sections, but of course, they're still working on it. And in our breakout rooms, we can chat more, but we would love any input on what is missing, things that we've overlooked, And really the hope is that this will be shared with the ACCEL network moving forward and continue to be a helpful resource. So I'm going to put that link in the chat here, but of course, knowing there's another group to share out, just wait till after that to dive into it. But yeah, definitely reach out if there are any questions, and I'll pass it back to you, Gina.
Thanks so much, Seth. Again, I think everything here is super polished and fantastic, and I just really appreciate all the time you've spent on this. And I know that Seth's group, or this group, will be ending with this cycle. So I think if you're interested in joining this group, or joining efforts for this group and joining the breakout room, a good focus will be how can we share out the work that's already been done, instead of trying to add on to it. How do we really share the resources that have already been created, since they will have completed their term here. So we have our last group, the climate mental health group, and I'll just sharing your screen. Great.
Hey, I am representing kind of the climate mental health working group, but it's also being led by folks from the Climate Mental Health Network, Sarah Newman and Larissa Dooley. And, you know, we formed this group because of, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just see your desktop. I don't know if you're trying to share slides or not.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
That looks good. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we formed this group because there's a lot of emotions coming up from youth across the world. This was a survey of 10,000 youth. And, you know, there's a lot of sadness and fear and anxiety, anger, powerlessness out there. Apologies for the blurry graphic, but like 4 out of 10 youth are hesitant to have children because of climate change. You know, 8 out of 10 think that people have failed to take care of the planet. A lot of youth, they found in the survey too, were unhappy about how their governments were handling climate change. So there's all these different emotions that come up. And I will also want to add too, also, you know, apathy or denial is also, you know, another emotion that many youth and adults may have about climate change. The overwhelmingness of the problem, you know, can lead to apathy and denial as well. So the Climate Mental Health Network and CLEAN have created some resources recently around for educators and thinking about how to help their students manage emotions related to climate mental health. There's also a lot of other people and organizations out there that are looking into this as well. If you go to the CLEAN website, the Climate Mental Health site, and maybe Gina, you can put that in the chat for me. We actually have a whole kind of repository of resources for educators that were not created by CLEAN, but created by all sorts of different folks out there to help support climate mental health. Anyways, CLEAN and the Climate Mental Health Network had created a few kind of short lesson plans activities. And I'll get to that in a second. And one of the things that we were kind of finding is that there was a lot of hesitancy from teachers in terms of talking about climate emotions in the classroom. And so that's kind of one of the goals kind of this group was to figure out how we could help better support educators, essentially. So the members of the group, we have members from, kind of all over the US in different programs. Climate stewards, USDA Forest Service, UNESCO, NOAA, some of, Environmental Education Center, and subject to climate, independent earth and space science educator. We also have had some members from a couple different universities in the group as well, kind of curious about how to do this more at the university level. So we had a variety of different members with, I think, different goals for this group and different interests in this group. I think one thing is our members were just, wanting to learn more about climate mental health, and see how they could, utilize or provide support for the audiences that they work with. And I think that we've had a mix of what audiences folks have been interested in trying to provide support for. And so a lot of our conversations kind of started with, well, what are like exact goals we want to try to meet, and what audiences do we want to focus on? So these are kind of the goals that were set up by the Climate Mental Health Network, and updated some based on what the group's interests were, which was to spread awareness to teachers and other climate environmental education groups about currently existing resources and tips, understand and address some of the apprehensions about addressing climate emotions in the classroom that come up, and potentially to create additional wellness, mindfulness resources. Really just so that, the ultimate goal behind all this is to try to create more resilient students and educators who can, better manage climate emotions. So this picture on the side is an example of one of the resources up on the clean side at the moment, that provides some different activities and lesson plans that educators can do in the classroom. There's also a bunch on the Climate Mental Health Network. I think Subject to Climate has some stuff. So you can find out more about some of those existing resources at the clean site that Gina put in the chat. So we kind of, from these goals, decided to focus on kind of two different projects. One was to put together a webinar / also potentially use it as a conference presentation for teacher conferences to help provide more of these supports to educators. So we've had a lot of conversation about, okay, well, how to do this? What does this look like? How do we create something that's not already reproducing reinventing the wheel, because there are a lot of webinars popping up out there about climate mental health and everything. So one of our plans, I think, is we're going to meet with some district administrators in the early fall to get input and feedback on what they feel like would be most useful. We're also hoping that maybe eventually this could be a presentation that could be delivered by like administrators. So it'd be kind of a train the trainer type model. We're going to try to roll out initial webinar in October, and also create kind of a marketing kit for the webinar and for conference presentations, so that others could kind of use those marketing kits and tools to advertise similar, like if they're going to offer one of these webinars at their school district. The other thing that came up in the group, I think, was just this need to know more about what is causing the apprehension the educators have. And so and also to better understand what the educators themselves need versus the students or the youth. And so we applied for a series innovation grant and were awarded some funding to develop some focus groups. And we're going to actually focus on a couple different audiences because there was interest in the group on focusing not only on K-12 educators, but also the older groups like university faculty who are either teaching courses at the university level or who are mentoring graduate students who are doing active research into climate science and the impacts of climate change. So one of our ACCEL members, Juliana, I forget how you say her last name, but she will be helping us kind of put together and run these focus groups. And then from that, we're hoping to get more information to then kind of put out a survey out there to better understand educators' needs and kind of, faculty and graduate student needs around climate mental health supports. So the webinar we're hoping is going to integrate, a space to share emotions for people, role plays some actual situations of how to support youth with their climate emotions, have some of these conversations with youth, kind of develop a culture of care, use trauma-informed practices, and a place to then share out kind of the existing tools and resources that currently exist out there. So the Climate Mental Health Network, CLEAN, a lot of your other organizations host webinars. So we'll be sending out more information to the whole ACCEL network, and we'll encourage and ask you to share with others that are in your own networks. The focus groups are going to kind of look at a couple different research questions. They're going to look at essentially what is the training and support that educators and researchers need to feel confident and comfortable to explore climate emotions while teaching about those climate change topics, and then what support specifically do the educators and researchers need to manage their own climate emotions. So next steps, we've only had a chance to meet, I think, like 3 or 4 times since ACCEL Summit due to capacity limitations. But we plan to continue with this group and hopefully run these focus groups sometime this summer, develop this survey sometime this summer or fall, and develop kind of this webinar, or at least a pilot of this webinar for the fall, along with a media kit to kind of get the word out about the survey and announce the webinar. So those are kind of our next steps. If you're interested in joining us and being part of this group, please let me know. I will put my contact information in the chat.
Thanks, Alicia. Alicia is my colleague, and I really want to thank her specifically for jumping into this and taking on what has been multiple ideas and a good amount of work for this topic area that is such a need right now. And there's very little out there, and we're trying to create, between the groups that are involved, trying to create more resources. In addition to that, get them into the hands of people that need them. So I'm super appreciative of Alicia and the Climate Mental Health Network for taking this on. And I absolutely recommend checking out some of those resources because they're so needed right now. So let's see, it is 3:41 Eastern. And Frank was able to join us, so I'll have him unmute in a second here, but I did just, before he goes ahead, wanted to share my screen again. There There we go. So this is a QR code to the Clean website, the landing page for the ACCEL Summit. That if you're just coming into this now and maybe want some more context, this would be a great place to find the context. A lot of you have been involved since the beginning, but some new folks are here. So if you'd like more context, this is a good place to start. And one thing that I want to just briefly touch on that has been kind of a development since we started this event 2 years ago now, is our ACCELS matrix, which is a living document that showcases the diversity of work that is happening in our community. Basically what it is an index of who is doing work on certain topics. So like you just saw with our working groups, there are people doing work on mental health. There are people doing work that's more research focused. There are people who are doing work in any kind of topic, energy or district level work, and whatever, you name it. There's all different types of work being done, and what the matrix was designed to do is to index those and allow people to search more easily for folks who are working on similar topics to them. So if you're new to this space or you're trying to figure out who exactly is in the space already, this is a really great place to start in terms of searching it up and saying, hey, I should probably connect with this person who works for this organization and learn more about how we can combine our efforts to make more progress, because we are stronger when we're working together and not in a silo. It's very easy to be siloed. So that's the ACCELS matrix. And once again, that's a document that lives on this landing page on the Clean website. We hope to continue expanding it. We didn't do a new round of updates for it for this event, just because this is more of a celebration and a share out rather than a direct new initiative. This is more of a celebration and acknowledgement of what's already happened. But the plan currently is we will do another cycle, and folks will have the opportunity to contribute to the matrix again, and we'll keep updating it as time goes on. So that is a little explanation of the matrix. Frank, I don't know if you are able to.
I am here.
Okay. Frank is just gonna speak a little bit about our vision and the purpose of this work and where we can kind of go from here. So I will let him go.
Thank you, Nina. And it's so nice to be with you all. I wish I could be there in a more full capacity, but I had to drive. The timing of my day just got a little bit crazy. And so I'm only bit on audio. But first of all, I want to thank Gina, because Gina, you've been doing a lot of heavy lifting on the original vision for this. I know there are a lot of other hands involved, but Gina didn't happen without you. So I thank you immensely, because what we're doing here is really in the heart of what we were trying to do back in 2008. So just to take you back, the original work when we were building the Climate Literacy Guide of 2008 was a small group of us came together and said, you know, there's no way you could build a climate literate nation, world, without collaborations. And there's certain things that we have to do to kind of figure out how to collaborate better. It's from there we start monthly telecons on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. And the community has grown, the work has expanded, the kinds of work has expanded, the kinds of audiences we've served, the subtopics have expanded. But the only way that we can really do what Gina said is if we have awareness of each other. And then once we know there's a cluster of people, maybe we could do something together that we can't do apart. I think that's really the heart of a collaboration vision. And that goes all the way back to the beginning. It's ironic that we are now redoing the climate literacy guide. I am here to tell you some news that the timetable has been shifted yet again, and it will be out, if not in August, in early September. And good Lord, it's been a lot of work. But what that really says is that, you know, the climate literacy guide of 2024 is another opportunity to surge our work, to come together, to work together, to really do all the heavy work that is what building a climate literate, if you want to use that frame, nation, world, community. So, you know, when I heard only 2 of the report outs, Mark and I talked a little bit earlier today about the workforce work. This is amazing work, but you know, this is another innovation in the clean community, or because we're able to come together and really focus in ways that our weekly calls don't do, or our listserv doesn't do. So I just really, I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. Obviously, we need to find more money to do this work. That's, you know, my number one charge to try and figure out. But just today, we dropped $50 million of climate ready workforce earlier today. That's why I was in Portland on a media call with Secretary of Commerce and NOAA leadership. So, I mean, that's a piece of the puzzle, but there's so much more going on. But without collaboration, we don't maximize the opportunity. And clearly, this is a time, if we're going to address the climate crisis, that education is going to play its heavy lift. We're going to have to leverage everything we have to its maximum impact. And so what we're doing here is exactly that. More needs and more supports, but I think it's promising. So I'm encouraged that we're going to continue going down this road. So I don't want to speak too long, but Gina, immense gratitude for all your heavy lift to keep this going. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. That's very, very kind shout out. And thanks again for jumping on when it's not exactly a good time for you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I just want to say
Gina,
that
I'm always going to make time for clean. So that's, you know, you guys are in my heart. That's always going to happen. So you know, it's just a matter of trying to make it happen. So it's always going to happen. It's just a matter of making it happen.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Frank. And I know a lot of us are anticipating the new climate literacy guide, and I appreciate the updates about that. And I know it's highly anticipated, and that you guys have put a ton of work into it. But it'll be, I think, very interesting to see what those new principles, what effect those have on our work and how they guide us into the future, because there's such a foundational element of clean, and of all the work that comes from that. So I appreciate the update about that. And one thing that I just wanted to mention, kind of orienting us into the future. I mentioned before that some of our groups are going to be sunsetting and some will be continuing the work. I think you got a pretty good sense from listening to each of the groups who's kind of at the end of this cycle and which groups feel like there's more work to be done. So what we're going to do is put out a call for new proposals, and by that I mean new working groups, in July. So I would like everyone to keep their eyes peeled for that announcement. I will send it out to the Clean listserv. If you are not on the Clean listserv, I can put the link in the chat. It might take me a few minutes, but I will put the link in the chat. That's the best way to stay connected to all of this ACCELS work and beyond, because that's where I'll share the announcement. If you're interested in leading a working group, please consider that. I think I can meet with anyone who is interested in doing that. But essentially, we try to make it as flexible as possible, not too many expectations other than you're making progress toward a goal, and meeting as much as time allows, and everyone has different schedules, so it's tough. But basically, if you're interested in leading a group, please do consider that. We have a lot of topics that have not yet been covered. We have a lot of great ones right now, but there's so much that is untouched. I saw that a few folks did share in the chat already ideas that they have. So we're going to open a few breakout rooms for that. Continue putting them in the chat if you are interested. And that's the goal. I appreciate everyone who has not only led working groups, but participated in them as well. There's a lot of work that's been happening asynchronously, which is really honestly the most the most practical thing, just because even today we're recording this because not everyone can meet at the same time, and not everyone is always going to be available at the same time. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of folks watching this recording after the fact. Many people told me that they will be. And so all of that work that happens behind the scenes is just so important. And I just want to keep momentum going with all of that. So the recording will be shared after today ends. We won't record the breakout rooms, obviously, but this discussion here will be shared again on the listserv. Make sure you sign up for that. And definitely keep an eye out for the new call for proposals in July. So I had a couple of questions about how these breakout rooms are going to work, which were really good questions. If you have been involved in a working group thus far, I recommend joining that group first, and seeing that play out, and then maybe hopping to another one if you have interest in a new working group. Another thing that I really recommend is if you are in one of these new one of the new working groups, please exchange information so you know how to get in touch with each other. It's definitely possible that I have everyone's registration information, so I can go back and connect folks to each other, but it'll be a lot easier if you can cut me out as the middleman. So please do share contact information if you plan to stay in touch. It would be good to be thinking about this new call for proposals in July, and what that might look like, and what folks might want to lead on there. So I was working on making the breakout rooms. Does anyone have thoughts or questions before I open those up?
I do, Gina.
Yep.
Maybe to mention, are there other people who would like this idea? Obviously, some of us who are in room 2 in particular need to stay around for room 2, but we don't want to be stuck there only. Like, is that something that we can have agreed? Let's go and visit each other's breakout rooms because we want to have a conversation. Does that sound within the keeping of things?
Yeah.
I mean, not abandon it. We'll keep somebody in, keep somebody in the room, but if we certainly want to reach out to the others and compliment their work and talk.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I think that that's a good plan if you can send someone else, or maybe pop out for a second and come back. I think it's fair to hop around and maybe just try to make the most of the time. Does that make sense? I think it's okay to hop around.
That's the idea. I guess part of it is having the boss, if you don't mind me calling you that for a second. I mean that in a positive way. Acknowledge that type of thing that's why we're doing it. We're not. Oh, who cares? There's a break, and we'll coordinate it. But I would encourage other people to do it too.
Definitely. Hopping around is very much welcome. Yes. Thanks for asking that explicitly, because that's what I was trying to get at with my explanation, is that I assume people will want to be in multiple breakout rooms. So maybe if you can just check in with the group that you've been involved with first and then move on to kind of what you are hoping to join in the future, that would be probably my recommendation. But definitely definitely go ahead and hop around. I was trying to have a good eye on the chat to see what new breakout rooms had been suggested. And I know these are just kind of loose ideas. There's absolutely no obligation at all for anyone who suggested anything in the chat. But these were the three that I saw pop up. Room 6, 7, and 8, environmental groups in middle and high school and their best practices. Room 7, community-led adaptation strategies, and room 8 on adult education. I can make more breakout rooms. Feel free to put it in the chat, but those were kind of the ones that I saw pop up. And it is 3:58. So I just want to say thank you again to many people, everyone who's here today, everyone who couldn't come today but is going to watch the recording and plans to be in touch after the fact. Our working group leaders who have spent a lot of time over the past 6 months trying to rally people. Everyone's super busy, so it is not an easy job. The participants of those working groups, and then our planning committee, who have been really integral in making sure that these events can continue to happen. So I just really appreciate all those folks. And we will not reconvene here. So I'll open up the breakout rooms and folks can feel free to just use the time as they need. And then I will officially close them at 5 Eastern. Any other questions? Okay. Cool. And I will hop around too. So I will see most of you in the rooms.
Hi, Gina. How do we get into the various breakout rooms?
Yeah, do you see a pop-up? No? Oh, okay. Sorry.